On Wednesdays, we wear pink and review musical remakes of classic teen comedies. Today, we're talking Mean Girls. What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and as I do with all my movie reviews, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about the Mean Girls remake, who worked on it, what it's about, all that good stuff. Then I'll go into the things I did and did not like about it, the pros and cons. And finally, I'll let you know who I think this musical movie is for, if anyone. If that kind of thing sounds cool to you and you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters and on streaming, make sure you subscribe. Now, for those that are unaware, Mean Girls follows Cady Heron, a transfer student who becomes a hit with the Plastics, an A-list girl clique at her new school, when she makes the mistake of falling for Aaron Samuels, the ex-boyfriend of Alpha Plastic Regina George. This version of Mean Girls is a musical teen comedy, and it's written just like the original by Tina Fey, but directed by Samantha and Arturo Perez Jr. in their directorial debut. It's based on, of course, the original movie that came out in 2004, and more directly based on the actual musical that was on Broadway, or I think is still on Broadway. The movie's in theaters this weekend and is PG-13 with a runtime of about an hour and 45 minutes, which I think is a good length for a movie like this. This movie stars Angourie as Cady. You might know her from the Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy. She plays Betty Brant. She also looks a lot like Amy Adams and even sounds like her in some ways. You have Renee Rapp playing Regina George. Now, she actually played Regina George in the Broadway musical, so she's definitely very familiar with this character. Another notable person on the cast is, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Auli'i Cravalho. She was actually the voice of Moana in the movie. Aside from that, you have a bunch of cameos, specifically with the adult characters in the movie. Of course, there's Tina Fey, as well as Tim Meadows from the original movie. You've got Jenna Ficher, Busy Phillips, John Hamm, Ashley Park, and probably some other cameos that I just didn't notice. But overall, a pretty great cast. Now, before we get into my pros and cons, I want to let you know what my expectations were going into the movie. So that way, maybe you have a better idea of where I stand. So before watching it, my expectations were pretty low, to be honest. I love the original Mean Girls movie. It is an absolute classic and a must own, something you have to have in your collection, especially if you grew up around that time. I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and link to the Blu-ray that I have of it in the description box below. It's the 15th anniversary edition. And yeah, for me, I just like to own all of the movies that I love because you never know when they're going to be taken off of streaming services. So if you want to pick that up, go ahead and use the link in the description. It's the best price you're going to find on it, and it gives me a little kickback, so it helps out the channel. Now, aside from just loving the original movie, I had heard that the musical on Broadway wasn't that great. And with a lot of the marketing and some of the trailers for this movie, it seemed like they were trying to hide the fact that it was, in fact, based on the musical, which I feel like is a little bit sketchy. And again, part of why my expectations were so low. It felt like the studio was trying to hide that from us. But all right, so you know where I stand. Let's go ahead and get into the pros, the things I liked about Mean Girls. For one, right off the bat, like literally the first scene, this movie hits hard with the comedy. I was there with some press and some critics, but there was also a lot of fans in the audience. And there were a number of moments throughout the movie where people just busted out cackling at some of the jokes and also at some of the ways they transition from musical moments to these serious and dramatic scenes. It was just really funny the way they handled that. There's also some really solid camera work and some interesting transitions from scene to scene. So shout out to the directors and the cinematographer. I think he's a relative newcomer. His name is Bill Kirstein, and from what I could see, he's just done a lot of like music videos for the most part. But overall, really good job with the cinematography and the editing and the way that they use the camera in different scenes. Another thing is that they touch on a lot of the things that we love from the original movie, whether it's certain storylines or just different jokes, while at the same time having their own flavor and flair. So if you're a diehard lover of the original, I think you're definitely going to get a lot of fan service out of this movie and a lot of moments that are going to make you feel nostalgic and reminiscent about the original. Another pro is the lead actress, Angourie. I feel like she played Cady really well. It's different than how Lindsay Lohan played her in the original movie. I feel like she's a lot more awkward while not being a cartoon character version of herself. And I also feel like we got more depth out of her character in this movie than we did in the original. Also, we have to talk about Renee Rapp, the lady that plays Regina George in this, and of course who played her in the Broadway version. Her musical moments were insane. Definitely highlights of the movie. And she can sing. And some of the songs that she performed were, I mean, legit like pop bangers. Like, I could definitely hear this on the radio. If anybody listens to the radio nowadays, God, how old am I? Okay, I could hear this on Spotify? Is that what the kids listen to nowadays? But all in all, I don't know anything about her as an actress or as a singer, but I definitely feel like after this, I could totally see her career blowing up. Aside from that, though, there were some brilliant cameos sprinkled out throughout the movie. You know, I mentioned some of the actors and actresses that are in it, and every single time they had a moment on screen, it was hilarious. Also, Tina Fey has a musical moment in this movie that made me die laughing. It was so funny. So overall, really a lot to like about this, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are a few things that I didn't enjoy about Mean Girls. But before we get into those, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by you. That's right. I'm just a small channel here with barely over 2,000 subscribers, so I don't have any major corporate sponsors or anything like that. So just by watching the video, you're really helping me out. If you want to be super dope and show your support in the easiest possible way, do me a solid and like the video and maybe leave a comment below. Let me know what are some of your favorite scenes or lines or moments from the original Mean Girls movie. Drop that down in the comments. You can also now join as a channel member if you want to help support me financially, or just subscribe for free if you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies coming out. So either way, whatever you do, I appreciate it. All right, on to the cons. Okay, the first con that jumped out to me when watching the movie was with the lead actress. Now, I mentioned overall, I really liked her in this, but she is not, at least as far as I can tell, known for her singing. And although she was, you know, fine, you can definitely tell that there was a lot of auto-tune going on whenever she would have her big moments. And as you can imagine, as the main character, she has a lot of numbers throughout the movie. And so there was a serious and noticeable shift in the quality of her performances versus somebody like the person that played Regina George, for example. Also, for you purists out there, people that love the original movie, there are a number of things that were cut from this one. And some were some pretty significant plot points from the original movie. Now, of course, I understand that they have to make space for all the musical numbers, so they're gonna have to cut out a few storylines here and there, otherwise you're gonna end up with a 3-hour-long movie. So I'm not mad at them for doing that, but I have to list it as a con because I do think that that's gonna bother some people. Also, you know, overall, I liked a lot of the songs in this movie, but there were a couple that were just a bit cheesy or out of place. Just a couple songs that didn't quite work for me. Particularly, there's one towards the beginning of the movie and one at the very end. One of which was performed by Cady, which I talked about. I feel like she wasn't as strong of a performer. And another was by a secondary character who it felt like they were trying to give more development to, but it just didn't work because they didn't really give us much more with that character as the movie went on. So it just felt a little out of place. But yeah, overall, there was definitely more good than bad in this one. Now, who do I think Mean Girls 2024, the musical remake, is for? Well, for one, probably the most important piece is if you are a fan of the original movie, I think there's a lot to enjoy here, and I think you'll have a good time watching it. Now, don't go into it expecting it to surpass the original. It's not going to do that, especially not with, you know, the nostalgia glasses that we have on for the original. But if you just look at it as what it is, which is a modernized retelling of that story with a musical twist, I think you're definitely going to be able to enjoy this. Now, on the other side of that, if you've already decided that you're going to hate it, which I know a lot of people have, well, then you're going to probably be able to find enough things in the movie to hate and to back up your opinion. But for me, I say, don't be so negative. Like, why would you watch a movie hoping to hate it? That just doesn't make sense to me. I want to love every movie I see. Now, unfortunately, they're not all great, but at least I want to love them. So I don't know, maybe try that. Another thing as far as who may or may not like the movie is the reason why the studio was so dead set on hiding the fact that it's a musical. And that is, studios believe, for whatever reason, I'm sure they have numbers to back it up, that the general audience doesn't like musicals. So if you are the type of person who doesn't enjoy musicals, well, surprise, surprise, you're probably not going to like this one either. So yeah, it wouldn't be for those people. But I will say this, I see a lot of movies. Every single week I'm watching new movies in theaters, and it has been a while since a movie has ended and the entire audience has clapped. And that happened here when I was watching Mean Girls. After the movie ended, the entire audience applauded. So for whatever that's worth, I think it kind of gives us an idea as to how good it is. So yeah, for me, Mean Girls 2024, the musical remake, it's definitely fetch. But either way, if Mean Girls sounds good to you, go ahead and check it out in theaters this weekend. And if you've already seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters and on streaming, make sure you subscribe. All right, my dude, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.